don't understand, and that is that God had told David to wait. They had not complied with his request to play the tape that Catherine brought out in prime time. That was the agreement. They didn't play it in prime time. Probably very few people in this country heard it at all. And so God told David to wait. And we waited, as I say, partly for an indication or some kind of sign from God or a green light. And that green light, I believe, came when David was instructed by God to begin writing the 7 seals. But the FBI were impatient, and on April 19th, of course, they overrode the negotiators who were telling him to take his time and write this out, and then everybody would come out. They just decided to come in with the gas and demolish the building. And I don't know whether you got the footage tonight, but there's one footage where it says that their aim was to isolate us all in pockets, and by the end of the morning they'd pretty well done that. Those of us that were in the chapel were not able to get down to those that were in the kitchen area, and the ones upstairs were pretty well blocked off from getting up and downstairs because they were demolished by the tanks and so forth. So there's probably a lot of people that would have liked to have got out of the fire once the fire started that were unable to. We know for a fact that there were people that came out on the offside from the cameras where the media were not available to take pictures, who were shot.
As they were trying to escape.
As they were trying to come out.
So the bottom line is you really didn't trust this
We didn't trust the government.
Yeah,
They hadn't given us any reason to trust them.
Right.
That kind of an incident. I understand that. I wanted to ask Mr. Jamar, I'm actually confused, and I don't have a firm opinion. I want to get a clarification. In the tapes on March 4th, it's been alleged that David Koresh was the person who initially called about the milk, or did the FBI suggest the milk? Did David Koresh ask for milk? The report here says the FBI offered milk in return. Did Koresh initiate the milk request?
I think so, yes.
And was this on the tapes, let's get her, that's Heather Jones, out, and then we'll send you the milk?
I'm sorry, would you repeat? There was noise behind me. I couldn't hear you.
Let's get her out, and then let me send you the milk. In other words, the core question here is that the FBI offered milk in return for the release of some children.
Right.
Yesterday we heard that Koresh believed that the promise was violated because that the tapes suggest that there is the phrase, now it may be other phrases in it too, let's get her out and then let me send you the milk.
Well, that was an effort to, this is, remember, March 4th. It's an effort to establish a quid pro quo, an exchange here.
And the next day she came out, Heather Jones.
It was an effort to get that done. She did come out, but that exchange was an effort by the negotiator to establish that type of relationship and to communicate with Koresh.
So do you believe that then not sending the milk after she came out the next day gave Koresh some reason to doubt whether or not you were going to follow through on the negotiated deal? You don't believe that was a negotiated deal? Send her out and we'll send you milk?
I don't think it was at all. He chose to let her go for his reasons. He never involved himself in the quid pro quo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've been engaged over several days, as I think you all can tell, asking a series of what I think are very insightful questions and receiving a lot of information. Lest you leave from here with the impression that everybody on that side of the aisle is just can't say enough nice things about you and we're all the bad guys. Specifically, the gentleman from Michigan previously praised you, and I'm sure he was sincere in that. But just 2 years ago in testimony and when these hearings were held, he called what you did a disgrace. So there's more than meets the ear in these things. What we're trying to do, certainly over here, is ask some questions to avoid these problems coming up in the future, and I would certainly hope that you all would share in that. Mr. Kavanaugh, I have in my hand here a amount of Play-Doh. Mr. Bush, if you could, this is just standard Play-Doh. If that were a flashbang grenade or a stun grenade, the same thing, which was live, which pin had been pulled, would you feel comfortable just holding that in your hand?
Well, Mr. Barr, a flashbang grenade ejects a cardboard tube out the bottom, so if you knew, you could probably have it hold it in a proper way to have it eject. A flashbang grenade, my answer is no. I would not want to hold it, but a flashbang
Right.
grenade has no fragmentation at all.
No, I know that, and don't anticipate where I'm going with it. I don't mean for you to be defensive. There's no reason to. Earlier today, there was testimony from Mr. Schumer that these are not devices that can harm somebody, and in fact, they can't they?
Well, there is no fragmentation. There is concussion,
Right.
and a blast.
Is a flashbang the same as a stun grenade?
Stun grenade, yes, sir.
Okay. Those are classified as destructive devices under 26 U.S.C. Section 5845F, aren't they?
Yes, sir, they are.
And as a matter of fact, the ATF in court takes a position in convicting people that possess these devices that they are destructive devices. Is that true?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
That they can kill people. Is that true?
I think it would be, you'd have to hold it close to your body, but it's possible, certainly, yes, sir.
Well, a gentleman by the name of Warren L. Parker, an explosives enforcement officer, Bureau of ATF, on May 11, 1994, in court, said under oath that they are designed to help kill the suspect while not endangering the law enforcement officer when they're used for those purposes. But anyway, again, I'm not being critical of you or anything. I think that there were some mischaracterizations deliberately this morning that I wanted to clear up with regard to these. The question that I have relates to what appear to be some very serious miscalculations on the part of law enforcement officials trying to gauge the response of the people inside the facility there. Both at the beginning of this, we had agents testify that despite the fact that the folks on the inside knew what was coming, they had amassed large numbers of weapons, which is obvious from looking at the questions and hearing y'all's testimony. The agents said they were stunned. They were surprised at what happened. And then on the other end of what we're talking about right now, going in with I guess what you all consider somewhat more benign activities, such as the introduction of the tear gas, some surprise on the part of the firing that came out of there and so forth. And the question, I have here an autopsy photo, and I'm not going to introduce it because it's rather gross. And it's very sad. It's a photograph of a one-year-old child, and it's been burned. And right in the middle of the remains is a ferret round. Right smack in the middle of the remains of this one-year-old child is a ferret round with the CS gas. I find it hard to follow y'all's thinking if the activities on April 19th were considered to be benign. They caused a lot of deaths. We may never know exactly who died. A lot of the autopsies reveal that people died from suffocation and debris falling on them, and we may never know how much of that was caused from the walls caving in when the tanks came in and so forth, or how many others might have died from the ferret rounds coming in. Do y'all feel, and again, I don't mean to be critical, but I think there were some bad misgauging of responses on the other side. Do you all recognize that in hindsight, certainly, which is what we're all operating under here, that there were miscalculations with regard to how these folks in there would respond to what they, I think, correctly identified as aggressive moves? And I'm not saying the aggressive moves were necessarily unjustified. Is that of concern to you all as you kind of look back on this whole process? Mr. Jamar?
I think the inability to get people to come out of there with some gas was a surprise to us. The fact that it made the way the Koresh was able to control those people such that they didn't get out, and the fact that they ended up all dying in what I consider murder-suicide. I think there were 17 who were shot in there. When that was and how they were shot, I don't know. I think you're saying here's a ferret round lying in the remains of a one-year-old child, and then concluding that that child died from that ferret round is I think, contrary to the autopsy, I would think.
Anybody that got this gas on their skin was in terrible pain. A lot of the guys were screaming, if they got it on their skin. And let
me insert this. They found one baby that had a ferret in their body. If it hit you, it could kill you.
Yeah, one of the adults, I understand, I didn't see it, but I was told that one of the adults who did happen to have a gas mask on was hit full in the face with one of them, and it knocked him off his feet onto the floor. It didn't injure him too badly, but there was enough force in it to knock him off his feet.